some of the community questions as well. We gathered some. But before that, we would like to answer your questions, our attendees. Roman, Sean, please let us know if you have any questions. And also, if you like, we can deep dive into your app, your project here to troubleshoot your problems here live.
Let's say try to troubleshoot your lower the expectations.
I think, yeah. Hey, yes, Roman.
All right, thank you. And I apologize, my camera for some reason not working, so I can join video, not my intention.
That's okay, no worries.
So I have a couple of questions actually. So the first one, is it possible to show the model just for half screen only, not the full screen? I couldn't find in the settings something like that.
You can overcome this issue by selecting as the background as transparent, so that whenever the model is on, it's going to be transparent. And inside that model, you can have a div which is going to take only the half space of the entire screen. I can share my screen and just play around with it in the live session if you want.
That would be great.
Yes.
Okay.
Let me share my screen. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
I have Playground app here. Let's create a new screen here. Modal example, let's say, and let's add something here, like some buttons maybe. So we have got some buttons, and let's add a modal. And yeah, like since the initial state is visible, we cannot see anything but the model itself. So just to be clear, let's make it with a view with a background of red color and make this as flags. So we can see the model here. So first of all, when you go to the model properties and choose transparent, this, like initially when you saw the white screen, it was the background of that model. But now when you choose the transparent, it's not going to be there anymore. But since the model is on, we're not be able to click on the buttons. So once we have this, like instead of setting the flex with like 1, you can go ahead and choose window of height, or like some values, for example, like 500 pt. As you can see, it's, yeah, you can make it half. But and if you want to bring this down below, you can have another view site, or like you can just do models. One sec. Let's have a container view, and we will call this container. And container will have flags 1, and we just want the justification to be the bottom. And let's add this new view inside there. So as you can see, the model is only halfway. And what I like to do in this kind of cases, instead of using a container here, I tend to use blur view of our components. It makes it a little fancy. So let's remove this container from here, delete this one, and make this one flex and justify below. As you can see, when the model is visible, you can see the background blurred, and your content on the top hat is going to be your model's content. So that's how I like to do things in Draftbit.
That's excellent. That's great.
Yeah. Okay. I hope this was clear, right?
Yes, absolutely. 100% makes all sense. And just one more question unrelated to this. So in the function stack, when I have a sequence of API calls, is there a way to ensure that every subsequent API call only fires if the previous one succeeded? I know I can probably like do something like, have a response and maybe like make a conditional on that response, but like, is it just if it returns a 200 status, fire, otherwise kind of don't? Because I ran some situations where I have a chained API calls and then like I expect them to be in a sequence, but then like the second one gets to my backend before the first one, and then like it messes things up. So I do some workarounds and stuff, but I'm just curious.
I see. Like in Draftbit, all of our API calls are synchronous, so they will definitely wait one another. So if you're having an issue on your backend side, like and see that, for example, the API call 3, let's add 3 API calls here, and let's talk over it from the example. So imagine you have like 3 calls. Let's make a call to this service. Okay, so this, let's bring this button to the top so that in the code we will see. So as you can see, this line of code will definitely be called after this has been complete. But I guess your question is, you only want to continue to this second row if there is a successful result come out of this one,
Yeah.
right? So like basically, for that, how many API calls are we talking about here? Like, is it like more than 5?
I don't think it's more than 5. I mean, like 3 is a good example.
Yeah. So I think like if it's just gonna be 3, like if it's less than 5, I suggest you go and create some if statements in the action stacks. Like I'm sure you have done it before. Like once you make the first call and then like you just set the result, first result. And if you don't have any result, for example, in your JSON results, you might have like a status or something else. Like if that condition is true, you can go ahead and make the call for the second one. And like you can create this kind of 3. If it is true, you make this, and you can just add as many if statements as you want in your action stack. So this will assure you to see like if something happened, if something bad happened in this first call, it's never gonna go and call the second one. But for API calls that are like larger than 5, 6, 7 calls, I think in that case, we have to dive into some custom functions. We have to use some promise all functionality of JavaScript, and that will ensure that all those calls will be done synchronously. And at the end, you will get an either true or false result. But I guess in this case, if you have just 3 or 4, I suggest you go ahead and use this if 3s, because it's just going to be easier for you to handle the logic there.
Yeah, that makes sense. In this if statement, is there a way, because sometimes it just returns a 200 status, like I don't need a actual, like there's nothing in the body of the response or anything, it just does stuff. Is there just a way to reference this like success?
Like are you like able to update your backends? Because like in it's gonna be much easier if you just return at least a state message.
I can do it. Yeah, for sure I can do it. I was just kind of curious if there's a way to
Exactly. So that's gonna be much easier. Otherwise, we just have to do some additional custom functions to see that it works a lot. But yeah, if you can update them, it's just gonna be much easier.
No problem. Okay, sounds good. And just, if it's okay, I have one more question. I was curious, is there any element that I can use to like confirm user action? Like, you know, like it can like briefly appear on the screen and then fade away. I know I can do like a conditional, I can have like a screen variable and then set it to true or false to make it appear and then kind of disappear if I change it from true to false. But this is like a fade away functionality. Like, well, say when a user like adds something to cart, like show something on the screen, like, okay, you know, success, like added to cart or whatever, and then it just kind of disappears by itself in a second. Or do I have to like write a function for like a fading away and then run a custom function to do it?
What do you mean by fade away? Are we talking about some kind of animations, or you're just
the opacity is going to go from like 100 to 0?
Oh, so look, if you're talking about animations, again, it's possible in Draftbit, but unfortunately not with our built-in tools. You just have to use some custom functions that animates through one state to another. There's a library called React Native Reanimatable. I'm not. I don't know how comfortable you are using custom codes, but animatable. This library works perfectly fine with Draftbit. All you have to do is just add this, and like they've got pretty good documentations here. This is where you can animate the opacity, the height and width of all the elements and stuff. But unfortunately, yeah, you have to use this kind of additional third-party library in order to animate your.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, sounds good. I just wanted to double check. Okay, sounds good. That's
let me share this on the chat so that you can just have.
And could you please also share the version number compatible with the builder? Are we going to use it in the latest version?
And the latest works fine, perfectly fine. Okay.
Okay, and actually, I have a question. Like, is there a way to show us how to use the promise for the API calls, just like for a demo?
Right now?
If it's not very difficult, I mean.
Actually, like the thing is, for that, we have to have the URLs, exact URLs for the promise calls, because there are ways for you to use our built-in API components within the custom codes, but it's just gonna bring lots of complexity to these office hours. But I'm sure when you search for a like let me do it with the screen share again.
Thank you.
JavaScript promise all example. So in this example, as you can see, it has like 3 different promises. So which means that there's gonna be 3 different API calls. So instead of promise.resolve in this case, we're just gonna use await fetch my first URL, and it's gonna be the same for the second part and the third part. So like these URLs are going to be the URLs that you want to make. For example, you're using Xano backend, you're just gonna patch them in. If you're using some data, the properties for these calls, you just have to add them with the parameters. You can just search through all this JavaScript related documentations. You will be able to find them all, or even ChatGPT can help you out. So once you create your fetch calls, all you have to do is just promise all, add them as an array, and then after you finish, you just do whatever you want with those. So once you're done with this, all you have to do is make a function call on your, for example, let's make a global function. And we have to, like, if you want this to be a synchronous function, we don't have to use then, but let's use it with this. Actually, since this is going to be await, I'm so sorry. We don't have to do await here because we're going to use fetch functions. So in this case, this function is going to be an synchronous function. We first have to create all these and then do whatever you want with these values. And at the end of the day, you can just, for example, set a global variable instead of console logging. But this is how we can be sure that all these 3 functions work perfectly fine. And in case of errors, you can just handle the errors within this function. But yeah, this approach is clearly for scenarios where we have a lot of promises. But if we have only 3 or 4 promises, we can just go ahead and use if statements.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Good to know.
Yeah, is this clear now for you?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, no worries.
I was wondering. Okay. Any other questions? Yeah, Sean.
Hi, for my sense of I'm using the image picker component, and I would like a border created upon the selection of the respective image or use of the camera. I want the container that will hold the user selected photo to either rotate horizontally if it's a horizontal photo, or vertically if it's a vertical picture. How can I do that? Because right now it's a static size container based on the fixed dimensions that I've assigned.
So like once you select the image, you want to show a portrait view based on, or the landscape view based on the image size, right?
Correct. So it's essentially a preview. I've noticed, I think either Facebook or X automatically rotate or resize it accordingly.
I see. The thing is, yeah, I think I haven't done this before, so I have to play around with this myself. But I'm sure that there might be libraries that helps you to decide whether an image is portrait or landscape, and based on that value, we can just go ahead and choose it. But let me. This is a live session, so let's try to do it ourselves, right? So, for example, this is gonna be.
Yeah, that's fun.
Exactly. So I like.
Thank you.
I like to play around with this kind of things. So let's have a screen variable called selected image.
We can't see your
Sorry. Sorry. Can you guys see now?
Yeah.
Yes. And let's make this pressable and add these inside here. And on the pressable, let's image picker. And let's call this results my selected image result. And then set variable selected image as my selected image results. And then on my image, so this is going to be the basic image picker example. Oops, sorry, not one. Data and selected image. And this will only it's visible. So let's add an icon. Here's my icon. What? Oh, here. And it's going to be a photo. So if selected image doesn't exist, show this photo. If selected image does exist, show the image. Okay, so when we press on this, let's choose an example photo. There you go, it shows. So at this stage, what we do is on this pressable, this open image picker sets the base64 string of an image. So that's all we got from the builder. So in order to decide whether this image is a portrait or landscape, I think we have to do some Googling. So how to detect if an image is landscape or portrait based on base64 string. Okay, this is C# example. Let's add JavaScript. It's using jQuery. That's not going to work for us. This workaround is using national Python and a bit of the origin properties. So image source. Okay, let's try this. I have no idea whether it's going to work or not, but it's worth to try. Oops. Function. Let's add a screen function here. So this property will be my source. Get orientation. Okay, so actually at this stage, let's see. Let's console log orientation before we return this. Okay, so and let's come back to our press function. Once we get that, run function and choose get orientation, and source will be my selected image result, and results name is orientation result. And yeah, if everything works perfectly, we will see some console logs about this image size. So let's select an image. This okay, this is a portrait one. React Native image does not construct. Okay, so this doesn't work, huh? This is supposed to be a JavaScript thing. So I think I have to add React Native. So we have, if we import the image library, we can use this image.getSize. Oh, very nice. Okay, so that works fine. So let's see if we can import React Native image. No, we can't. So for this example, we have to create outcome. So that's how we supposed to do. Meanwhile, there's a chance for me to show you something else that we do in Draftbit. So basically, what I'm going to do is just going to return the image library from the React Native package and just going to export it as it is in order to use this in our global or screen functions. And I'm going to call it custom library. Okay, so in my function, get orientation function, let's delete them all. It's not going to work. I'm just going to import my custom library. Okay, so we have to go and see the example image get size. So this is going to be an asynchronous call, so that's why we have to make it await. So const result, let's say. And in this case, the source, instead of source, 1 second, I have to check the code again. Yeah, so instead of source, I'm just going to provide CRC. Actually, I can just use it as this source. It's just going to get some results. And here, let's say, instead of set orientation, return landscape, else return portrait. Okay. So console log result. Actually, we don't have to return anything here. So let me do something else. One extra thing. Screen variables. Let's call this orientation. It's going to be a string. And this set orientation. I'm just going to be sure get orientation instead of returning anything. I'm just going to set the orientation as landscape. And set orientation to portrait. Okay. In this case, let's add another text box for this demonstration. Orientation. I hope this works.
You are using screen variables to represent the orientation,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly. And like if this works, I'm just going to use this orientation to render different types of views based on the size of the image. Oh, God, it didn't work. So what did I do wrong? Let's see. Okay. Custom library that image that gets size. Let's try it again. Fingers crossed. Undefined. Why it's saying, okay, let's cover this try. I'm just going to give another try to this. Otherwise, we can move on to some questions and we can just take a look at it again. So console log error. If we see another error, double tap once. Undefined. I don't know. I'm just going to try something as if I'm doing something wrong. Console log custom library. Okay, that image. So am I importing this library correctly or not? Okay. So custom library image. So based on this example, it was supposed to be working. But yeah. But to be honest, Sean, this is how we have to go through. Like I'm sure that there's a small thing that I'm missing out. But if we somehow manage to get this screen function works correctly, I'm sure there's something really stupid happening is that doesn't causing it not to work. And by somehow if we can get the orientation from it, all we have to do is have two different image views, one for the portrait mode and one for the landscape mode. So like based on the orientation, you're just gonna hide one another so that it can be displayed accordingly. But also there's another option, like we don't have to go through all this thing. In order to fit everything in, you can always use the contain property of the image so that it will always be contained within the image size. So like it can be smaller in size, but it can show entire image. I'm sure that it's not the answer of your question, but in this way, you can be sure that all the image is always visible to the screen.
I really appreciate the effort. I would not have expected it to be so complicated, but it just makes me appreciate all the different solutions. So thank you very much.
No worries.
Yeah, if we can resolve it, by the way, we can post it anytime.
Exactly. I will help you out with that.
Thank you.
Merhaba Kaan. Merhaba is hello in Turkish.
Yeah, we have Khan. Okay. Any other questions, Sean? Or
I did notice that if I press cancel on the image picker, my conditional frame container still appears if no image is selected. I don't know if that is just a simple setting that I haven't, selected accordingly.
If you don't select, so in this case, you just have to add some extra logic. So if my image result is not valid, you just don't go ahead and select the image. It's just gonna be an empty row. So I didn't add those extra actions here, but yeah, you have to handle the error checking before you're setting the selected image. You only have to select the image once you select it. and once you're sure that there's a value inside that result.
Is that a custom code?
No, not customers. So for example, let's try it together. Let's say if there is my selected action results, then go ahead and select my screen variable. And let's console log again, just to be sure what we get from the my selected image result. I think it's got updated. Let's say, okay, see, it didn't do anything because I didn't select anything. But if I go ahead and choose something, it just went through and selected the image.
Awesome, thank you.
No worries.
Yes, Tom, go ahead.
Hi. Good afternoon to you, Merhaba. I have a question, also image related. So what I would like to achieve is the user uploads an image. The uploaded image is going to be displayed on the screen. Then I want the user to apply blur on the image by touch. So basically using the finger, they will apply blur on the image. So on the screen, that's the main fundamental issue I have. On the screen, there would be another two buttons. One of them is going to reset, erase the blur, and the other one is going to save the image with the blur.
Yes.
Obviously, the blur functionality doesn't exist natively in Draftbit because it's a very specific requirement.
Exactly.
But I wonder if it can be done easily. I have no developer background, nor the intelligence, but yeah, I try my best.
Yeah, I think, I'm not sure. I haven't done such thing before, but I'm sure that it's going to be possible. But for that, we just have to investigate whether there's a working library that works in the Expo and the React Native world. And for that, I think you need to just get some experts' help so that experts can.
So it's not off the okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, it's not going to be a straightforward thing, unfortunately, especially when you try to play around with the image on live. So if you told me that I just want to make the image blurred on a click, it's going to be slightly easier because you're just going to maybe at the end of the day you can make a post request to a backend and just blur the image and get it back in the worst case scenario. But in this case, it's just going to be a tricky question.
Okay, thank you. Nice to meet you, both of you.
Same here.
Okay. Any other great questions? I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, Roman.
All right. Since we got a bit of time, so on one of my screens, I basically set the auth header from the API call if it's successful, and then ideally I'd like to run a follow-up API call on the same screen, the same function stack that also requires an auth header. And I can't do that, right? Because I cannot use the same variable. I know I can probably do a workaround where I use that auth token as a parameter and pass it to my backend. I'm just kind of confirming that there's no other way to run an authenticated API call in the same function stack where you actually set the auth header from the previous API call.
So let me try to summarize what you have just said. You're making two API calls. The first one is not authenticated, and it's just going to get the auth header, right? And then you want to use this auth header in the second API call.
Correct.
And once you make them in a row, not all the time, it's just going to update the global variable so that your second call will not always will work. Yeah, I see your point. I see your problem. Let me think. How can we overcome this issue? Basically, in this kind of scenarios, you just make a call and get the auth header and just set it as a global variable somewhere, and then go ahead and use it. In one of my experts app, I had the similar issue, but it was all custom code. So it was very easy to handle in the custom code because you just wait until you get this auth code and then you can go ahead. Oh, actually, no, it's not that hard. For example, let's come back here. Let's delete some. Actually, let's don't delete this. Actually, let's delete them and just create an.
Yeah, we can see your screen again.
I'm so sorry. I just closed them. Not to make influence screens. Okay, so for example, when you're in a screen and press on this button, and you just want to make two API calls, like the first call, let's call this API request, and in this request, it's going to be an unauthenticated call, which will give you the token. So you will see my token result, let's say. As you said, we have an API that makes a request, and then it gets my token result. And then you can wait until actually, that's a really good question. Like in Draftbit, there's no direct way to do that, I guess. 1 second. We cannot.
Yeah, and to my knowledge, like if you, let's say, set a variable, I have a auth header as my app variable,
Yes,
a global
I
variable.
understand.
But if you set it, you cannot use this new value of that variable that I set in the same function.
Maybe we can use them in the upcoming screen or in between screens, right?
Yeah, if you were using in 2 different API calls, it's definitely gonna work. But in this case, like if Roman wants to make it in the same action stack, it's just gonna have this problem. First of all, in Draftbit, you can have the API endpoints, API groups, like globally authenticated or globally unauthenticated. So, for example, like this, let's go from this demo. So, let's say when you add a REST API and you set your authorization header, header on this case, for example, like this. So every single endpoint that you add here is going to be using this global variable to make the calls. So for example, you will have this kind of 2 endpoints, REST API endpoints in the builder, like I just did, like second one. And let's say, I'm just going to try an example. So in this case, for example, this can use a different authorization header, and this one can use a different authorization header, or like even no authorization header at all. Like, and you can make a call to this endpoint and get the token and set it in the global variable, and on another screen, you can go ahead and just make a call to this endpoint over here. But there are some ways to overcome this issue to make it available in the same action stack, but it definitely requires you to get some custom functions. So instead of going deep on the custom functions, I suggest you not to try to make 2 calls in the same action stack. You have to be sure that the authorization header that you got from this first endpoint is set in the global variable before you make a request to this one. There's no way in the current version of the Draftbit, there's no way for you to determine the auth token for each endpoint from the action stack, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Okay, no problem. Thank you for confirming.
Yes, exactly. If you understood, like I'm happy, but yeah, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to help that much.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I have like some Band-Aid workaround for this, but I was just curious if there's a better way. But thank you.
Yes. Okay. Cool. Good question, by the way. Thank you.
Yeah. Great. Any other questions? Sean? Yes, Sean, go ahead.
Text string or text component that basically will display an address that comes from Google Maps API. I asked the question of how to remove the country being included in the text output. Dave gave me a suggestion that involved some custom function, but I wanted to know if there is a transform function that might make it a little more simple in terms of just simply having it cut off or filter out USA from the output at the address being output.
I think I see your point. Like the Google geocoding API returns the address information in an array. So if it's just one single JSON file, you can just go ahead and use the transform functions and extract the keys. But in the Google geocoding API scenario, we have to find that particular parts, in this example, the country, from that array. And like in the builder, we don't have that kind of array search functionalities like transform that does this. So definitely you have to use a custom function for that, unfortunately.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
I don't think we have any other questions. If you like, we can go and check one of the community questions.
All right, go ahead.
The unanswered ones.
Can you share one in the chat so that I can open it from my side?
Yeah, sure. We have. Let's go with the 4th one. Custom function work for navigation with delay.
Okay.
Okay. But I'm sending you from Slack actually.
Okay, so let me share my screen. So this is the question that you were talking about, right? Okay, so this is the, yeah, we discussed about this, right? So this person
Yes.
was trying to navigate from one screen to another after a certain amount of time, like in this case, like 1.7 seconds. But he was not able to do it when there's nested navigation. So like if it was only a root navigator and like all the screens are in the same root navigation, it would have been much easier. But in this case, when we have nested navigators, we'll have problems. I think we have created a sample app for this, right?
Sample app, yeah, I sent you
Okay.
again from Slack.
Yes, that's a great example. So for example, in this search screen, we want to be able to go to the item screen.
Yeah.
So how should we do that? In the search screen.
Quick delay, by the way.
Okay, so let's first see how to go there first. Like instead of assigning all the components, let's add a button here. I just want to render something. Oops.
Oops.
Yeah, just pretend that didn't happen.
Okay.
Okay.
I hope there's any deployment right now going on like before.
Yeah, sometimes.
Let me double check.
So from which screen are we in? We are in the search screen and we want to go to the item details screen, right? So
Yep.
item details screen. Yes. So this button will definitely take you from this screen to that second screen. That works perfectly fine. So how does it do that? Let's take a look at the navigation part. So this is the function that we need to call. So I really suggest you, once you try to navigate between screens using custom functions, I really suggest you to go into the code level and just copy and paste. Cheat here, because this is going to tell you which stacks to use. For example, in this side, you first go to stack 1, then inside that stack 2, inside that tab navigator, you go to the tab 1 with the items detail screen. So this is how it works. So in this example, for example, this person was trying to navigate to the contractor stack navigator using this function, but basically that was he had to play around the root navigator, initial screen, and everything. So everything on this screen was perfectly fine. That he already told that it works fine when it's normal. But the only problem that he had was this problem. So let's copy and paste this function. Oops, where's my playground app? Okay, in this. Am I in the correct? Okay, so let's delete this. This didn't work. Okay. Light navigation.
You're in your playground app, by the way, not the
Yes.
sample app.
Sorry. I was thinking exactly. Yeah. Sorry.
That one.
Okay, so let's add a screen function. The light navigation. So in this late navigation, we're just gonna navigate to the screen. So let's save it for now. Let's come back to the code. Let's copy paste everything here. Let's come back to the screen function. We have to sure that we're gonna use navigation here. So instead of this, we're gonna go there, and let's wait for only 1 second. Okay. All right. So right now, instead of going to the screen directly, let's delete this and run this function instead. Delay navigation. All right. Fingers crossed. Press immediately. Wait for 1 second and just goes to the next screen. So that's how we do it.
Right.
And you can
It's
just
simple. It's
exactly.
very simple that way, right?
Yeah, as long as you know how to cheat, everything is. So that's how we do it.
Okay, and one last question for you, Safa. If of course, Sean or Roman don't have any questions. Yes, please, Sean.
I have a question. I have a multi-picker kind of screen with the various options a user could select that it has a backend using the fetch and list through Draftbit. My question pertains to how do I output the other options the user could select, because I'm afraid because of the list component in Draftbit, it will only output one result, the user's tapping versus the other ones. I don't know if that's clear, but I could send a
So you want to
message.
make selection in item level? You mean?
So basically, I have a list that is being provided through my backend, but because the list feature in Draftbit only shows one view component, if you will, I don't know how to, I guess, appropriate each separate user option if Draftbit is only showing one view container, if that makes sense.
I wasn't able to understand it clearly, so if I'm apologies if I'm mistaken here, but I think you have a fetch component like this on your screen, and inside your fetch component you have a list. Am I right?
Correct.
And inside this list, let's make a call to here. So for example, this one makes a call to this API, and let's add a view, and inside this view, let's add a text. And in this text, oops, this text will show something. So let's see, in this case, item, oops, why it doesn't update the list? Email, I guess, will work. Oh, one.
Let's check your list. Have you defined the data source?
Yes, this one works fine. Okay. So let's fetch. Oh my God, you're right. Oh. Email.
Yeah.
Okay, so Sean, like so far, are we clear? So we're displaying. So what are you trying to achieve here exactly?
So let's say I want to select the last email being displayed as a user selected option. How do I designate a pressable to that particular selection? Because as we can see in the components tree, there's only one view displaying.
First of all, you can add as many things as you want inside this. Like, for example, under the list, you can add a view, and inside this view, you can add as many things as you want. And in this case, for example, a checkbox. And that checkbox can display some Boolean value that you have gathered from your API call. I'm not sure. Let's see if this example data has some Boolean values. Oops, one sec. Initial value will be list item ID, username index. Yeah, let's say in this case, if index equals to, equals to 3. So it will show through on the index 3 if like this condition implies. So you can just render as many things as you want, like based on the JSON output that you got from your fetch call. So for example, in here, if you want to assign some pressables, and like for example, each row will have an ID, I'm making a pressable or button inside this list view to make some certain action, you can also do that as well.
Let's try to do that. So for example, let's.
Okay, so also add a button here, and it's clicking on that button. We want to on press. I just want a console log something based on my list. So like the rows, for example, avatar. No, not avatar. First name. Like you can do anything else, but yeah, for example, on this press, we're just gonna get Harold. On this press, we're just gonna get Jesus, kind of thing. I don't know if I understood your question correctly, but yeah, like.
Does it answer your question? At least part of it, Sean? You can. Sean, we can't hear you.
You're muted.
I'm sorry, I got disconnected from the audio. What was the question?
So, does it answer your question?
Yes, for the most part. Sorry, I was trying to follow along visually, but without audio, so it's a little hard.
All right. Okay. I'm glad that it helped a little at the end of the day. Okay.
No, it helped a lot. Thank you again.
No worries. Anytime.
You can anytime reach out from Intercom to us.
I'll do just that. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. I think it's almost finished, right? We can wrap up the session. It's been an
Thank you very
hour
much.
right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, please feel free to join the upcoming sessions as well. Gather all of your questions. And here we will have another expert like Safa, and I'm sure they will answer your questions perfectly like Safa did. And yeah, see you in the next Office Hours session. Thank you, Safa, for joining and for your contribution. And of course, thank you, Roman and Sean, for your questions and for your contributions as well.
Thank you both. That was awesome.
Thank you for being
Okay,
here.
great to have you.
Take care.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.